Welcome to the Write Your Own Story podcast. I'm your host, Betsy Leonidas, and the founder of the Write Your Own Story company. Girl, I can tell you right now, you are definitely enough. Here we value service, sisterhood, connection, laughter, and that super genuine, keep it real, tell you like it is honesty. My hope is at the end of each episode, you realize you can do whatever it is you dream about and that you are not alone with what you struggle with. I'm hoping that you are snapping and clapping and hell yesing your way through each one of these episodes. So if this tracks with you, let's get started. I'm so glad you're here. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the latest episode of the Write Your Own Story podcast. I am your host, Betsy Leonidas, and I'm so excited to be here with tech leaders and founders of a new dating app, Lisa Lay and Julia Lestage. Ladies, thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So according to a little research, there are 381 million people globally who are using online dating services. And we are just going to dive into all things dating, being single, online dating. But I really love to set the intention before we kick off into any episode. So we're grounded as, people facilitating the conversation and for listeners to really kind of know what to expect for the through line through. And really, I love the intention that we have discussed, which is all around changing how people write their own love stories. I love that. I think so often being single, I only have the perspective of now being in my 40s and being single. It can feel really overwhelming, as can life. But any notion of writing your own story puts you in power and control, which is a really wonderful feeling and what I want for every woman. I'm really, really excited to have this conversation. Okay, I'm going to kick us off with a little bit of a fancy sort of intro bio that's pre-read so everyone can hear me read out loud and probably watch me flub. I feel like I'm in fourth grade and having to read in front of the class. But then I would love to kick it over to you guys and we'll just keep it going. So hang tight with me real quick. Everyone listening, listen up. This is pretty amazing. So meet Lisa, a single 28-year-old female AI engineer and serial tech entrepreneur. And Julia, 58, a recent divorcee after 30 years of marriage and a seasoned TV and tech exec. After a chance meeting at a dinner party 5 years ago, these two women became fast friends after bonding over working in a male-dominated tech world. Definitely want to talk about that too. This chance meeting led to a mission of rehumanizing dating technology and AI. Self-professed word nerds, these ladies are changing the online dating game with a deceptively simple dating approach. They are playful, fast-tracking dater online journeys to mutual discovery, expression, authenticity, and fun. Why? Because, in their words, technology has hijacked human flirting rituals. Their new world dating order they describe as where word nerds go dating. Think Wordle had a love child with Snapchat. These ladies believe that humans need to lead dating technology and write their own love story. One-size-fits-all, superficial matching algorithms are no longer working anymore. I mean, get it, girls. This is amazing. And it's true. Before we get into those, I think people are going to be so fascinated to listen to this, single or not single. So before we get into painting the picture of what it is really like to be single out there, I would love to just hear from you guys a little bit more about yourselves. Lisa, would you mind starting? Just tell us about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Well, start at the beginning. So I was born in Vietnam and came to America when I was young with my parents and older brother. I come from a family of 4 siblings. I'm the second oldest. Studied computer science in college, and I've never worked at a real company. I've only ever worked at startups. So
Awesome.
This is my 5th startup, and Julia is one of my best friends in the world. And it's been such an honor to go on this journey with her because we've always wanted to work together, and the cards finally aligned for us to begin this venture together about a year ago. So
amazing.
Here we are.
I love that. Sisterhood and friendship is everything, right? Absolutely.
True dat. Yeah.
True dat. All right, Julia, let's hear it.
I grew up in the Midwest, St. Louis, till I was about 15. Then I moved to Miami when I was for high school. Then I did 1 BA in New England and then 1 BA in the UK. I do like British culture, and I cannot lie, at this single time in my life, British men also. I have 3 grown children, 3 daughters. They're badasses.
Awesome.
And I worked in TV for a long time, about 30 years. And halfway, maybe 2/3 into my career, I wrote a show about complaining about British weather called Weather Mob, M-O-B. It was actually about kvetching about British weather. And it was an emoji-led crowdsourced that citizen reporting social media weather company. And I sold it to Japanese men whom I adored. I worked with them for a while. Went back to long form storytelling, wrote a rom-com that's recently been optioned. And then about 5.5 years ago, I found myself divorced after 30 years of marriage.
I'm so
Terrific
sorry.
marriage that well, it begat 3 amazing daughters who
Yep.
are
I hear
kicking
you.
it. And I look at every chapter as, I don't know, I try to see it as happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
But not to say that that isn't hard to go through.
you know what? I think it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Change is hard, and change after that amount of time is
Yeah.
hard. And going on my first date after 30 years, having never been on a date, like not like date night date, like get dressed, put some makeup
Yeah.
on, go get a glass of wine, maybe kiss him, maybe not
Hmm.
date.
I will never forget mine. I am also divorced. I have 4 kids. We were married for 13 years, but together for like 16 or 17, and having to go on a first date again. And like, I was like, oh my God, what is my life right now? But I mean, every pivot has turned out to be a beautiful moment in my life, no matter hard
Mm,
or not hard.
mm,
And similar to you, I am
mm.
so blessed with amazing children. I've got 4. And so no regrets. Absolutely none.
I love the word pivot. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I do probably have some regrets that I picked up a dating app for the first time in my life a week before COVID hit, but that's for a chat later about all my
Yeah.
avatar boyfriends.
Oh my God, that's amazing. We should be drinking wine for this conversation. How are we not?
That's for darn sure.
I love that you guys are from sort of like opposite worlds, opposite parts of the life spectrum. How did you guys actually meet? I know that you sat at a dinner party, but I would love to hear it from your perspective.
Lisa, you hit it.
Okay, so it was 2019,
Uh-huh.
and I wasn't going home for Christmas that year. I was in college. I was a senior in college, and one of my professors invited me to a dinner, his Thanksgiving dinner with his family and his friends. And I went. It was also Julia's first Thanksgiving after her divorce. And we sat kind of diagonally across the table from each other. We ate, at one point, everyone at the dinner table went around and said something about themselves. And whatever we said resonated with the other person. And Julia ended up driving me home that night. And I remember sitting in the car outside of my dorm talking to her for an hour or two about what it's like being a woman and being a woman leader in tech and the startup world and things like that. And we just never really stopped talking since that night.
I love that.
It's
Isn't that
true. 5 years
amazing?
later, that's the truth.
Awesome. Sometimes souls just connect, right? And you're like, well,
Mm.
zoop, we're meant to be in each other's
Yeah.
lives. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really curious. Like, so I come from an advertising background. I've worked agency side, client side, all over, all over the world. But I've never really worked and sat in tech. What is it like being a woman in tech?
Well, shall I go first, Lisa? Lisa's like a 5-time entrepreneur, tech entrepreneur. This is
Right.
her 5th startup. She's 28. And what she
It's
didn't say
amazing.
about our story is when we met at that Thanksgiving table, it was a Thanksgiving. He was a friend of mine too, who used to teach at the Harvard Government School. And Lisa and he wrote the curriculum for tech and politics. Lisa was an undergraduate.
Oh
So
my
when she
God.
opened her mouth at that table, I was like, who is that?
Yeah.
And, I have never looked back. I mean, I don't think there's a day in the last 5 years where I wasn't like, who is that? I mean, Lisa is
Awesome.
so fabulous. And
I love
so,
it.
yeah, I mean, I think that day we'd work together at some point, and then we went on too. It is kind of that. I'm not woo woo, Lisa is, but
Oh, I'm woo woo.
I'm woo
I
woo. I'm
self-identify
not.
as woo woo. I self-identify as woo woo.
Lisa, would you like to jump in there?
Do we have some woo
I,
woo
re-
perspective?
We're just soul sisters.
We
Yep.
are soul sisters. We are soul
Yep.
sisters. And yeah, so it's such an honor and a privilege to, having gone through one tech startup, I the second time around, I really, really understand what founder dating means. And, Lisa and I our work lives in the last 5 years have gone in and out. And by the time we got in business together, just we're finishing each other's sentences, and it just makes such a difference to be We write and think about love all day long, but also we love each other. I mean, we'd literally end every business meeting saying, I love you. And,
Aw,
we are both straight, and
I totally
love
get it.
comes in every form. And so it's such a privilege to do that. It's also very strange and really lovely to be co-founding a startup with another woman.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I can. So, predominantly in your careers, have you worked mostly with men?
Yes, well, in my short career, I've only ever had male co-founders who are
Hmm.
wonderful, but this is my first time working with not only a great friend, but a woman and someone who I really look up to. And it's just been absolutely frictionless.
Love that.
It's true.
You
Yeah,
know,
I get it.
and it's not just because we're women, it's just because we get along so well. Like we just kind of complement each other really well. But it is my first time working with a woman, and it feels special as a woman to be co-founding a company with another woman, especially when you don't really see that sort of founding team that easily in the
Mm,
tech world.
mm,
No, definitely. And I think, we see so many people, or at least I see so many people in my life start businesses from a solo perspective. Like I'm flying solo
mm,
with just
mm,
support under me, and it must be so nice. I mean, sometimes I'm making decisions and I'm like,
mm.
well, dogs, what do we think? Like, because it's truly just me, myself, and I. And then I have a really wonderful producer slash sort of like brand strategist who works with me. And she's just so, and she also, so I'm 42 for just a couple more seconds here. And then she's in her young 20s. And like, they're the most energetic, aligned, like high frequency conversations when we have them. And I'm so grateful for them. But my point being an entrepreneur can be really lonely, no matter,
Mm,
how long
mm,
I've had a 20-year career, no matter,
mm,
but I'm doing something new and on purpose. I
mhm.
have no idea what I'm doing. I mean, I do, but like, have I ever like done this specifically? No. Have you guys ever done a dating app specifically? No. So it's so awesome that you guys have each other. That's very cool. Well, I was going to ask why you guys decided to work together, but it is clear you guys are just like completely aligned for a million reasons and complement each other in like such kind of like polarities and in a really beautiful way. Love this. Tell me about how you have, what are your thoughts on patriarchal norms and hierarchy and as it relates to structure, and how have you guys approached it?
I worked a lot with women up until I started my tech company around kvetching around the weather 15 years ago. I sold it about 9 years ago. And when I was, and so in media, there were a lot of women all the time. And then coming into tech, I was like, well, where are all the women? I was 43 when I started my first tech company. It was like crickets, and it was bizarre. And I just didn't know. I didn't realize that it was so male dominated. And when I first started raising money for my first tech startup, I had investors say to me, "Does your husband know you're raising money?"
Ugh.
Now, I have to tell you something. I ran a division of a national television network, from my
Mhm.
20s through my 30s, and made just a ton of money for said company. And not to mention running a home, co-founding, the three kids. And then the next question out of the next investor's mouth was, if I give you a check for $1 million, and, I just finished the advanced management course at Harvard Business School at 43. If I give you a check for $1 million, who will watch your children? And I get a little bombastic, or at least I did in
God.
my youth. And I was like, well, who's watching yours? And
Right?
then I started watching the stats on women in tech, and it's like 15 years ago, 3% of VC money was going to women. Now it's 1.5%.
Oh my, it's less?
1.5%. It's less. I mean, it's shocking.
What's
It is
driving this?
shocking. We can come back to that. But when Lisa and I co-founded our dating company focused on bringing more love stories to the world, Lisa and I decided that we were not gonna use the word chief, chief whatever, because it's a pejorative word.
I love it.
Um, uh,
Gotta go.
uh, Indigenous people of
Mhm.
Northern American continent basically said, this is what we're going to call power that we see in indigenous people tribes in the US. And when I started to look at it, I was like, and it's also male. And I was like, well, I don't want to be a chief. I was a CEO before. I don't want to be a chief. I also don't want to be alone doing this. And so Lisa and I sat down and we're like, well, what are we going to call ourselves? Because my old company, we used to joke, queen of rain and lightning and sun. And I was like, why do we have to buy into patriarchal norms of what power struggle and hierarchies are? So Lisa and I sat down, and what did we do, Lisa?
What did we do? We decided
What did we decide to call ourselves?
We're Queens of Hearts.
Yes. I love
that.
this.
That is our formal entity papers. That's literally our most of our team is female, and we love our male.
Sure.
And anybody, we are inclusive. Everybody is welcome in our world. But we did laugh because we had an advisor who just came on board who is male, self-identifies as male, and I was like, Lisa, what are we going to call him? Like, we're both queens, and this is what came out of your mouth about 30 seconds. 1 second, Lisa. What did you say?
We're gonna call him King Consort.
It's amazing.
King Consort. How great is that? I was like,
so great.
Yeah.
Let's do
So
it.
we're just doing it our way, and we just we just suddenly stopped. And we're like, well, why? Why does it have to be this way? Why not ask questions? And I got to tell you something. And by the way, dating apps are a total matriarchy. Not in terms of who's building them. Not in terms of who's building them.
I was going to say.
No. I don't even know, Lisa. It'd be interesting to know, is there any other co-founding team where both are women and one of the engineers is an AI engineer and also female?
I don't think so.
Amazing. Okay, let's take a step back. So I love this dynamic that you guys have between each other and sort of taking your collective experience of what it's like to be a woman in tech and sort of where the gaps are and how you can just truly write your own rules, write your own story. You're like, you know what? I'm going to call myself whatever I want, and we're going to build this our way, which I absolutely love. Tech or not tech, ladies, this is how we do it. We write our own rules. Everyone can. Men too. Go for it. You clearly do. So I want to just quickly set the stage before we dive into all things into the app or the concept of the app, if you will. Let's set the stage for what it's like to be single. Do you guys have sort of stats that could set the stage for what it's like out there? What are people feeling? Like, what has the research told you as to why you need to continue to make an app in a pretty crowded space?
Julia's the stats person here.
Ooh, really? I love stats. Give it to me, Julia.
Okay, you ready?
I'm ready. So ready.
I started researching this long before kind of started faffing around with the app. So the delta of men to women, and this is obviously, Lisa and I are both straight. So the delta of men to women on dating apps is roughly 6 to 10 to 1. So it's totally a matriarchy.
Yeah.
And on average, women like 4% of the profiles that they see.
That tracks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on average, the top 10% of what kind of traditional norms of good looking are in whatever region that you are, for men, straight men, get 90% of the likes. The other 90% are getting crickets. Men like roughly 75 to 80% of what they see. So there's this massive imbalance. Gender bias, both ways, right? Men and women, the bias goes both ways. And yet people aren't matching and people are leaving mainstream apps in droves. And Tinder and Bumble and Hinge are tanking. They were on the up and up until about 2021. I think they've lost about $2.4 billion in the last couple of years. However, more highly targeted apps are on the rise. One size fits all is not okay anymore. And one of the most interesting stats is that Gen Z, can't remember who did the survey. I'll tell you later when we're off air line. Now care post-COVID, the personalities matter more than anything.
Awesome. I love that.
Hookupiness and forgetting to actually talk to each other and realize that connection can be more than skin. And we're not anti-skin by any means, and we're saying there's more. And we're also 100% embracing love.
I took a long break from dating apps and I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to go back on. I feel like sort of refreshed, regrounded really. And like my life, I feel deeply connected. Like this could be fun again. I went on and like literally, I think I made my profile, went to bed, woke up, and it is like 16,000 or like 1,600 people swiped. And I was like, how am I ever going to go through all these?
Yes.
It is so overwhelming. And it all, for someone who has no data behind this, just a personal experience, it just feels like men are like swipe, 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 swipe. Here's hoping, here's hoping, here's hoping, here's
Right,
hoping.
right.
Where women
And
are like, I don't like fish in the first pick. And, or like, let me just read his interests and like, does he have kind eyes? And I mean, we're all in there and way more selective. And again, this is literally not data led, just me and a couple of girls, because there are not many single people in my life that are women. I am one of the first in my community to get divorced. I'm like, sure, I'll go first. But, so it's not like I'm in college and we're all single going through this together. So I don't know. Dating it's just a whole interesting thing in the first place. So also taking another quick step back, when we are talking about those stats, are we seeing, what age group are we seeing indexing on dating? Are we seeing Gen Z because they're, I was reading something that's saying Gen Z's really kind of the last to adopt it because maybe to your point, they're more into the notion of like the whole picture, personality.
Adopt what? Adopt
dating
what?
apps. Yeah. Like who are using dating apps? What age groups?
You want to take this, Lisa?
well, I think
Or you
all
want to take
age
it?
groups. I think all age
Okay.
groups
Yeah.
are using dating apps, and that
Okay.
increasingly older generations are less apprehensive about meeting someone through online dating. It doesn't carry as much of a stigma anymore. And of course, Gen Z grew up with dating apps as they came of age, and of course they're using them. But that's also where the backlash is coming from, is from that generation. Yeah, bucking against the first gen of dating apps like Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, and how reductive it is and how it doesn't actually give you that much information about who a person really is, and it's really based on first impressions. It doesn't allow you to go deep because that's the way it was built. But yeah, so I think Gen Z is a big motivator for us for what is the second generation of dating apps going to look like. And Julia's already touched upon how the more targeted apps that are very focused on particular segments or particular interests are doing better than the mainstream ones. So yeah.
Profiles. You touched on fish. A lot of men have big fish in their profiles. I don't know why. And when I first went on the apps, I was like, these profiles are ridiculous. The prompts are, I don't want to diss Bumble and Tinder and Hinge. I mean, they were pioneering and trying to do the right thing at the beginning. I don't think they realized that their matching algorithms are binary and reductive and superficial. I mean, they were just kind of chucking it up there and seeing what works. And this next gen, and what Lisa and I are trying to do, is say, oh, wait. Why aren't human beings leading this? Why are we allowing the apps? Why do we did allow technology to hijack flirting, seduction, love? We did. And now we're sitting at this nexus to say, okay, we need to humanize tech again, because love ultimately, like AI, is not going to go on your date.
No, it sure isn't. It almost feels like it met the need, sort of this first gen concept met the need of people feeling like, oh my God, I can't meet anyone. Like, because I feel like being single, sometimes it really feels that way, app or no app. Like for me, I've got 4 kids and I have them 75% of the time, if not more. And so I'm like, when am I? And on my time off, I'm going to all their soccer games and all their things. So I'm like, I'm sorry, when am I dating? When am I like going to a bar to sit and meet someone? I'm like, oh, good God. That's like gives me, this much of room. So if there is like, I can imagine, I don't know if it was founded in this way or if it just sort of found its legs in this way where people are like, how am I ever going to meet someone? Or I've met, I'm in college and I've met everyone at this school and no one fits me. So it sort of like gave this like, almost like the superficial liking in social where you're like, you know what? I do feel good because people are liking my profile. It's like, I can't meet anyone. It's like, oh my God, look at this slew of people that I can just swipe through. Like, it feels like that was kind of it. But now it's like, it sounds like the need is shifting more to quality over quantity, right? People are like, okay, I don't need to see, 1,600 people swiping on my profile. I want to see good people. I want to see people that we have things in common with. Like, to your point, really humanizing and getting back to like, what are the core principles of dating in this modern world? Is that right? Am I getting it right?
I think you have it exactly right. I think what you're saying about how it's so easy and it's so it doesn't require a big time or energy investment to download a dating app and start swiping. And I think that was the big appeal when they first came on the scene is that it just massively lowered the barrier to entry for dating. You don't have to go out and spend money. You don't have to gather the courage to strike up a conversation with a stranger. But I think that's also the double-edged sword, is that it leaned too much into removing the effort from, as Julia would put, human seduction rituals or dating rituals, these courtship rituals that every society has, that are actually very complex and very nuanced and cultural, and it provides guardrails for how people meet and how people go through courtship, which online dating has just completely stripped all of that away. And so what you end up is you have like women receiving, and when I say women, I mean, women, people who identify as women, as feminine.
Sure.
um,
Yes.
they receive a lot of attention and swipes, but the swipes and the likes are very low value, because the
Agreed.
men, they don't have to put in any effort to express interest. And then once there is a match, both people like each other, you're just put into this blank room, this chat window, a blank screen, with nothing to help guide you, or to help the conversation or interaction unfold in a natural way or in a sophisticated way. And so people don't actually know, like, how to start the dance.
I think the stats are in the high 90s of how people meet, right? People are not meeting. You said you got about 1 minute to talk to someone at a Starbucks line, and if you're lucky, you might strike up a conversation over a pumpkin latte. But beyond that, we're not going back. I mean, the stats are that people are meeting online, or they're not meeting at all, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are single. But when I first started going on the apps 4.5 years ago, and it's called the apps for people who don't know that, who are not dating, because anybody who's dating is virtually dating. I looked at the profiles and I was horrified. I was like, well, why does every man say, I like red wine, skiing, travel, and I like to go to the gym, and I'm really tactile. And at first I was like, God, this is so silly. And then I stopped for a second and I said, not all these men, can be that kind of binary and reductive, but also boring. Then I started really studying the profile onboarding, and we started, and Lisa and I were at this juncture beginning to talk to each other about what we thought was missing, and which was partially just organic and authentic conversation. And the way the apps prompt you to talk about yourself at this juncture, it's just weird. And then I was like, you know what? I don't want to hold it against these men that they don't know it's weird to talk about yourself. What do you say?
Yeah.
Right? And to someone you might fancy that you don't even know, and to Lisa's, language, that you go into a kind of a open room. You're not sitting in a bar saying, let's talk over getting a beer. You're just suddenly thrown in the ocean together and say, let's talk. So we're trying to mimic, to the best of our abilities, remimic how people meet in the physical world. If you and I met at a bar, we would start talking. I wouldn't just go say hello and drop my trousers. Or I wouldn't just go up and be mid-sentence and turn around and walk away. How can we remind human beings to behave like human beings? And it's not gendered, right? Men and women want to talk to each other.
Totally.
And our science shows us that.
What's interesting is someone had made this comment to me, or maybe I read it online, but that men are writing their profiles saying, this is the value that I can give you, knowing that it's so matriarchal, to your point. They're like, I like red wine and I stay fit, so I will look good for you. And, I've been to therapy, or whatever it may be, where women are like, this is who I am. And men are like, this is what I can give you. So, to give them credit, they're like, please I know there's so many of us out there. Please pick me. And instead of being like, hey, let me show you and tell you organically who I am, they seem to be in this sort of like panic mode of being like, let me tell you about the value I can add to your life, which is important. But when a profile is to literally define yourself, they don't really even get the chance, I guess, or at least maybe that's how they feel.
Start a conversation. It doesn't even have to be defining. It's if you because there's so much imbalance Women have too many message, men have too few. And then what ends up happening is that straight men, these are the stats, it was reported by the BBC a year ago, are disproportionately harassing and assaulting women. And that's
Yikes.
partially coming out of desperation. Stat I read about a month ago is that 63% of young men between the ages of 20 and 30 in the United States are involuntarily single and sexless. That is shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah, it really is.
Mm.
So when we think about, we're saying first gen are no longer working, are we defining that by we're seeing people leaving the apps? Are we finding less matches as well? Is it also defined about like sort of success rate? Are people having success and like genuinely not even matching? Like are people finding life partners or, achieving their goals essentially? I know everyone's goal could be kind of different. Some people are like, hey man, I just want to get laid tonight. And some people are like, I am looking for marriage. So I don't know. How do we measure that in terms of like what's working and what's not outside of, hey, these guys are losing billions of dollars, which is reflective. Don't get me wrong. But I was just curious about from a user perspective.
You asked, like, are people leaving the apps? And the answer is 100% yes. In fact, on my screen right now, I'm looking at the graph that looks at monthly active users of Badoo, Bumble, Grindr, Hinge, Match, and Tinder. And from the period of 2019 until 2024, it goes up during COVID, during the pandemic. And since towards the end of the pandemic, it's gone like this. And so people are leaving the apps, as Julie says, in droves. And that's and we see it from the ground, as users, why people would be leaving these apps. I personally have deleted every dating app from my phone. And, sometimes you go through cycles where you download them again and you're like,
yeah,
you have some hope.
Right.
And then
you're like, I feel re-energized.
Right. And then you're just so quickly burned out and exasperated by the experience. It's not a very fun, or it's not a fun, wholesome experience going on dating apps. It's just boring.
Yeah.
Well, except when we use our own pedagogy, which we cannot tell you about. And that's when we've started to have fun because we test it out. We beta test in our own personal lives. We're always discreet, always transparent about what we do. But when you're ready, Betsy, it's a way that we have found to have more fun and get to authenticity quickly. And we don't want to define what success is for anyone. But what we do want to say is we know from the science, we have an amazing advisor, track this, who has a PhD in the neuroscience of love.
Oh, cool.
And she is advising us, and she's never advised a dating app before. And why she likes us is our pedagogy allows the brain to catch up with the body. Very and cool. Slow down for a hot minute and stop sensory reactions, right? And
I think that is the key to dating, is to slow it down. And
slow that sucker down.
I lwant that. Let your brain catch up with your body. And because even if you slowed things down physically, but you're like, I just want to attach. I don't want to be alone anymore. But you're like, but sure, I won't sleep with him yet. Or whatever it may be. There's something, I don't know there's still something where you have to connect slowly and slow down that attachment as well as the physical aspect of it in such a major way. I love that. I know we can't get into your secret sauce, but can we talk a little bit more about what it means to be 2.0? What are the humanization factors, just broadly speaking, that apps are missing? Really sort of what your intention is.
We're not 2.0. We're not 2.0. We're 1.0. We're back to the future. We are slowing this down and trying to go back to how human beings behaved and behaved in the physical world. The three people on the planet who actually met at church or in a restaurant or in the Starbucks line. The rest of us need to remember what it feels like to walk up or talk to someone you don't know or meet somebody at a gallery. And what does that dance look like? How do you get in concert with each other, but also just talk? What does talking mean on the interweb? So we are 1.0. Because swiping is not 1.0. Swiping That's is fair. We don't speak. I judge you on how you look, not who you are.
So tell me more in your research of what is that dance? Remind us all, for those of us who have just been swiping, help us get back into what the OG way of meeting and what that dance looks like. Both from, if you have from a neuroscience perspective, from any type of perspective, would be so great to hear.
We have two doctors that are advisors for us. I mean, one's a PhD and the other's a medical doctor who also has a master's degree in the psychology of aesthetics. And Dr. Anna Machin, who spent 12 years in the Oxford University Department of Evolutionary Anthropology has talked to, she's a formal advisor to us, but she's talked to Lisa and me about how human beings, bar meeting someone in a nightclub or on Tinder and just not speaking and going back and fooling around, do not pass go. She basically said, well, Lisa, you share this because this science is so interesting. And then I'll take over the aesthetics part. But if you want to talk about our talk with Anna, when she talked about kind of the cerebral connection, and her name is Dr. Anna Machin, Machin. She's amazing, and everybody should check out her work.
Yeah, Julia actually met her at a talk on conference that was originally supposed to be with Esther Perel, but Esther couldn't show up, so she was one of the speakers, and Julia just completely was amazed by what she was saying on the stage, and then approached her, and then she became our advisor. She's never agreed to advise a dating app before. But the amazing thing is that the stuff that she's saying about what her scientific research has uncovered about the neuroscience of love actually backs the pedagogy of what we're building. And it's been so great to see that validation from a scientific standpoint. So what Julia is referring to is our conversation with her where we discussed the initial stages of human attraction and the fact that for most of the animal kingdom, it's very visual based and it's very physical. Your physicality plays a huge role. I'm attracted to you.
It's visceral. It's very tindery.
Right. We get it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
For humans, Anna basically said that aside from meeting someone at a club and having like a one night stand where it might be a completely physical decision, every other form of human relationship, romantic relationship, or intimate relationship has at its core a cerebral or mental connection between the two people, and that people consider people consider your personality and how your two personalities combine, and that is where the chemistry comes from. And the looks are important, and they are, they're not secondary to the personality, but the personality is most definitely not secondary. It's very much at the forefront. And so with Tinder, especially Tinder, because it's so visual based, where you can just swipe at superhuman speed. I'm sure you've seen maybe your girlfriends swiping through Tinder, and you can just go so fast because you're just reacting to the visual cues. And you were asking Betsy about what does it look like when you have a more natural or more human form of meeting people. And we've all touched on the fact that it's slowed down, and it's slowed down enough where you're forced to intake the information about their personality and their quirks and the way they move and the way they talk and the words they choose, and all of that form a very three-dimensional view of a person that either makes them even more attractive than they look physically or less attractive if their personality is not hitting the mark. But that takes time to process. You can't do that on Tinder swiping so quickly. And then also on Tinder, you have one shot to I think that's why the men are selling so hard, as you mentioned earlier, like, this is what I can provide for you, this is why I'm qualified, because it's like you have one shot. Like if I say no to you, I'm like, I'm never going to consider you again. But that's not the way it is in real life. In real life, I meet someone in a classroom in college, maybe the first day I'm not interested. I keep seeing them, something grows, like I see other aspects of their personality, they grow on me. And that is much more real, but that's what dating apps are lacking nowadays, is that element of organic development.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I like thinking about there's sort of like two components to that initial piece of chemistry. Of course, it's the physical, and then it's sort of this like personality based cerebral, and then I feel like from there, if you continue to go slow, then it's sort of like evaluation of values and sort of lifestyle. And, that's why you continue to go slow, to be like, okay, like, we have this great, like, quote unquote chemistry. He's witty, he's funny, like he's fast, whatever. And then it's like, but are we like on the similar trajectory? And do we sit in the same values? And then, we always say, like, me and like the three single other people I know, I'm like, we always say that, like, it takes a couple of months for not like the skeletons to come out, because that seems really negative. I genuinely wholeheartedly believe everyone's trying their best. We're all in our different part of
Totally
our
agree.
journey. Everyone's trying their
Totally
best.
agree.
But like, you get into conflict, for example, and how do they handle conflict, and how do you manage conflict together, and can trigger things and whatever. Ooh, that just made me hit my mic. Apparently I'm so triggered. But my point being is like this nature of slow. And I was kind of trying to like break down and order process of like, okay, there's like the initial piece, which is to your point. And it's so important to point out, because I think so many of us have lost sight of, even when you run to someone at a bar, you're like, oh, he's hot. But then it's like, when you actually talk, you're like, oh my God, he's so boring, or he's so quiet and I'm so loud, or he's so wonderful, but I'm so nervous, or whatever it may be. I like that there is this whole other sort of cerebral component to that, like initial attraction, that the swipe at a two-dimensional level just genuinely can't get you, even if you're reading something.
Yeah, and what you were saying earlier about just now, about how it's your chemistry, your personality, you're attracted to this mental element, but then over time it unfolds whether your lives are compatible or not, whether you share the same values or hobbies or things you enjoy or dislike. And that comes later, like as you're getting to know somebody and as you're seriously evaluating their potential for being a partner. But I think we think that the issue with dating apps these days is that they index on that. Like if it's not just looks, they're indexing on lifestyle and hobbies. And so you end up with these, big questionnaires for onboarding where it's like, do you smoke? Do you go to the gym? Oh, only on weekends. Do you like dogs? Do you like cats? What religion are you?
Therefore, we're going to fall in love because you like cats, right? Oh,
Right.
Lisa might. She's a cat woman, but right. But what do we call it? It's kind of these reductive binary checklist onboarding of, because I like pubs and I like cats. Oh, we're going to get married. I'll have your babies tomorrow. It's ridiculous. Life partner because you like gardening and karaoke. And if it's sushi, I'll live with you forever. I mean, we just thought that's how the algorithms are built, and they're not going backwards. And that's part of why they're tanking, because they're not successful in that people are not. They may be making matches, but that doesn't mean that the criteria for which people match is going to set you up for long-term relationships. And our love doctor, we call her love doctor, Dr. Anna Machin, she talks about how basically long-term relationships, and I actually pushed her on this, love. And love could be a short-term relationship. Love could be one great night, but even a greater night because you actually had more connection. You talked before you got into the sack. But we're not judging. We're not judging one night stands. We're not judging anybody. And I've become so much less judgy being on apps. We're all just people we're just looking for connection. That's it.
We're doing our
But
best.
right now, right here, we need dating 1.0. We need to go back to the future and actually talk to each other, listen. And most importantly, and this is a secret sauce we can share with you. Don't freak out, Lisa, about what I'm going to say, because I'm not going to share too much, is humans need to take back the conversation, right? We're the ones that are actually going on the date, and we hope that people actually want to meet. So we are the only and the first dating app ever to have daters write their own matching algorithms.
Cool.
They speak for themselves and they match for themselves. And what do we mean by that? Stay tuned.
Got it. Deal. Okay, so the change that you're trying to drive, still in a two-dimensional world, how do we give people the power and the control to be authentic in who they are and what they're looking for, essentially? Is that the notion of humanizing and really getting back to that, to your point, 1.0? Am I getting this right?
How do we get back to it? I mean, it's something we've thought a lot about, and it's based in our own journey and our own journey beginning to kind of play with the pedagogy that we're working with for ourselves, stop and literally beta test. And by the way, Lisa and I do go on dates. We are single. Lisa's on no apps right now. She'll go back to them. I'm on 80 dating apps. I only date on about 3 or 4 of them, but you can't look at all the apps if you don't register for a profile.
Yeah.
So I talk to a lot of men, I do not go on as many dates as I do talk, but it's also a wonderful way of reminding myself There are a lot of great people out there, just
Sure.
wonderful people out there. And the
Yeah.
apps are not enabling us. And isn't that what tech is for? I mean, technology is basically a solo sport. Dating apps really shouldn't be. So we're
Yeah.
trying to kind of merge that thing. I mean, Betsy, you're on them. And
Mm-hmm.
so this is coming from our direct personal experience. We're not talking about any specific conversation, but it was a turning point for me when I hadn't been on a date for 30 years. I go on the app a week before COVID, dating apps a week before COVID. And because I couldn't meet anybody, I
Right.
had a lot of conversations. It was efficient. I'm not going to lie. I had a lot of
Right.
avatar boyfriends. I was learning about myself. I was learning about men again. I was learning about how to talk. And it was just this clunky, it was like getting off the ski lift, am I going to
There's no
fall?
graceful way to do it.
There's
Yeah,
no
totally.
graceful way to do it.
Yeah. But getting back to the concept and like really rooting this into the anthropology of how neurologically, physically love is formed. And to your point, love is fluid. And getting back to that, if people are like, okay, because I can't tell you, again, maybe it's my age group. I'm 42 and I would love to meet someone organically because that means we have context because we met, maybe we have geography in common or maybe we have common interest in common. Maybe, and like in Cincinnati, everybody knows everybody. So I'm like, you come with a reference, or whatever it may be. But that again,
A
I've one.
reference.
Can I see your
Google
references,
ratings,
please?
Google
Yeah, I
ratings,
know.
Trip,
Yes, I would like to see
TripAdvisor.
your Uber reviews. So my point being though, is that like, it is kind of scary to meet someone blind, but you also have the scarcity of time and in the current life phase that I'm in, etc. Anyway, so getting back to that human nature of it. And like, I think everyone would love to meet someone organically because that just feels right. And that feels like the way that like we quote unquote used to do, even if you're a Gen Z and you don't even know what used to be because you've grown up with technology in your hands since you were essentially an infant. So when people I like that this raises the bar in that way for those of us who are single out there to be like, okay, I'm starting to rethink this around this humanology. Like, so I know we can't get into too much of the app, but can you talk to at all sort of the intention of how you are bringing that human connection back with the concept that you're working on? Or is it even too soon to explain the concept? And we're just here to talk about what apps are missing.
Anna Matchin, our love doctor, the PhD and this anthropologist, she talks about that when the brain and the body are not in concert with each other, the knee-jerk reaction will always win, which is reaction to a first look. And then she talked about, as did this other doctor who has this degree in the psychology of aesthetics, that we are trained. She talked about how B-list movie stars are often the most traditionally beautiful movie star faces. Wherever your region is, I mean, obviously beauty is defined differently depending where you are. But the way the camera will hit on a B-list movie star, who are traditionally the most beautiful in terms of standards of beauty in your region. I just want to qualify that because obviously every country, every state, everything, are different. But whatever the norms are there, the camera will go, or your face will go. When you walk into a crowded room, you might look at who you consider to be the most beautiful person at the beginning. And that is often biologically, you will look at the person who's most symmetrical, their face. Fascinating. The symmetrical face is what the movie camera, or your eyes scanning across a crowded room, or even on Tinder. It's a 2D look, and we are trained as human beings to look for symmetry. Now, at first I thought it was a face. The anthropologist that we work with said, no, it's symmetry. I have 2 arms. I have 2 legs. I have 2 ears. And in the old days, in the cave people days, that denotated that you have good genes, then that you will be able to make babies that can survive in this world. I was like, God, this is really interesting. Then she said, A-list movie stars are the people that have interesting, quirky faces. And how we actually behave when we're functioning in the physical world is we will look at people. If we give ourselves a hot second to pause on a face and listen to what the person says, you hold the gaze. The second gaze is holding when you listen, partially because most people's faces and their bodies are not whatever perfect means social media says perfect. They're quirky, and the quirks are what hold us because we want to go and explore them. Meryl Streep has a very asymmetrical, quirky face. Dustin Hoffman does. And their faces pull us in and they hold us. I'm not going to talk about B-list movie stars, but you can think who they are. It doesn't really matter. What we're really talking about is the 2D transaction transactional. Just look at my face, judge me in about a hot second whether you think I'm beautiful. Your subconscious makes that judgment right away. And it is rooted in our genes, literally in our genes. And what Anna has said to us is why she loves our pedagogy is we are helping human beings to have their brains become part of the conversation. And that's not even necessarily talking. It's how you process. We can't say more than that, but it is really exciting. And what it does is, Lisa touched on this before, but Anna has talked about our love doctor, that we are the only mammals. We are the only mammals that mate with our brains. When we behave like all other mammals, i.e. going to a nightclub, I dance with you, we go shag in the bathroom. That is how horses, dogs, dolphins, puppies, kitties, squirrels, they don't have conversation, right? Yeah. They Tinder it.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, hey, they don't even Tinder it. I mean, half the time they're looking at the backsides. So we are trying to say, and Anna talks about the healthiest relationships are where you understand someone's personality. And she also drives hard at kindness. Mm-hmm. Kindness. It's really interesting, right? Love and kindness are words that you rarely see in the mission statements of dating apps. Real connections. We've made the most matches. Well, What about love? What about love?
And when we think about, the love that we provide for our children, it is really around safety and security, right? And sort of giving that safe, secure, stable foundation, and then eventually the scaffolding as they get older so that they can, kind of grow. But it's rooted in this kindness and acceptance of, to be truly who you are. And, with an open heart, and to give them that freedom. But I think, and if you think about the love that everyone, sort of biologically seeks, maybe, again, I am not talking to a love doctor, I'm talking to a therapist. So, but equal, scientific in a different way. But like, when I think about, how do I stabilize my kids during the divorce process and how do I ensure that they feel loved and supported? It really is around safety and security and openness and kindness. And like, that is truly at the end of the day, whether you're 8, 12, 25 or 45 or 55, that is really what everyone craves, I think, truly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, it must be. And I think that's such a good point. It's bringing up parental and, relationships with your children, because I'm sure everybody knows now that those traumas or those dynamics play out in your romantic partnerships, and you will recreate whatever patterns existed in your relationship with your parents if you're not aware of it. And that's why therapy is so helpful. It's like the most intimate relationship that you build in your life aside from blood. Yeah. So it will bring out so many insecurities and traumas and patterns. And
yeah, and it does. But I like that, the concept that you guys are, or at least the sort of foundational elements that you guys are rooting in, is really around that cerebral piece. Like the kindness, it feels like a personality trait, but it feels more inherent than that, I don't know. But again, like sort of stripping back to those roots of like what real love and connection is founded on. This is very cool. Very, very cool.
But it's not so real. One of the things Anna talks about, and we do too, which is it's not for any of us to say what love is to anyone else, but to hold the word and let it be the drug. Let us be slaves to that and that goal. And it is about trusting and authenticity, that we do know. It's about not judging. And my own journey on dating apps, I tell this story, and hear me out on this one just for a second, because I'm on so many apps, and that includes some of the racier apps. I do not self-identify. I didn't mean that to be like, I didn't mean to hit not so hard, but I've learned a lot about No, it is. I'm learning research about myself, right? What do I want? I've come out of a long marriage. Who am I now, right? What do I want to be? What feels good? And having conversations. And that's, our app is as much about giving people tools to learn. We're giving people tools to mutually discover each other, but also become more self-aware and be able to express yourself on your own, but also to somebody else.
So I think that, when I really reflect on our conversation, it's really around, not just trying to be the next dating app because it is such a lucrative category. Clearly, that is not where your guys' intention lies. And that it is getting back to the anthropology of how people, how humans connect, how we, how we originally connected before technology got sort of so in the middle of all of it, if you will. And I think that sounds amazing. And so it sounds like the app is in beta. If people want to be part of the beta test for this elusive app that is around truly human connection and really bringing that cerebral part to the forefront, how do they get into the beta test?
I'm very happy for people to hit me on LinkedIn, and we will get you on beta testing. We're going to do a closed launch at the beginning.
Yeah, that would be the most direct route.
If you're a bit of a word nerd and you like we are creating one of the biggest love language model on the planet. And if you care about love language and your love language is connected to words, then this is your jam.
Awesome. That is cool. I totally get that.
Like for me, I don't think there's anything that is more attractive or bigger turn on than a good conversation with someone. And if you feel the same, then I would say that this is something you want to try.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really my motivation for building the app, is to be able to have better, more connected conversations with the people I meet.
I love that. That's so great. And that really is that's so appealing for all of us out here just trying to make real human connection. I like to end every episode sort of asking, service, women, sisterhood, just really sort of continuing to progress women forward. One of my favorite questions to ask that I would love to ask you guys is, what do you wish women talked more openly about?
I think particularly in middle age, when you are divorced and dating, it's kind of the secret life of bees. And you're either divorced or you're not. And people who have never been on apps look at you like, are you kidding me? That happened, then that happened. What did you do? How did you do it? Why did you do it? Because we think dating should be fun. Like, when did it stop being
God,
fun?
Let's hope so.
Right? When did it stop being fun? Let's joke,
right? Yes.
I actually wish that women talked more, and men. At the beginning, we were going to do this app through the gaze of women, because Lisa and I are both women. And then we realized it needs to be the gaze of human beings. And men are treated as badly on apps as women are. CEO of Grindr recently did a talk about that, and he's like, I'm not a straight man, and I can see that Tinder treats men really badly. I don't think it's their intention. I just think the tech has gotten away from itself. But I wish women would share stories about sexuality and bodies, and men too, right? Whether it's menopause or manopause, or I'm divorced or I'm not divorced, or I've got kids, or I've got kids, I want to go on a date. Can someone please take them on Thursday night so I can have a standing beer at my favorite pub? I mean, how do we be in this community? And one of our favorite relationship therapists says that Esther Perel, she is my religion, talks about how, because we're all living so long, most people will have 2 to 3 meaningful relationships in their lifetimes. And so technology has not caught up. Humans have not caught up. Medicine hasn't caught up. Our bodies have not caught up. So I hope, and women, we are the keepers of the fire. We are the keepers of the conversation. And men need to talk more. Women need to talk more. And I think that women need to lead more, but also talk more about what love means, and be open to those of us who may not have gone the path or are living the life we thought we were, but we still want it.
Yeah. I love that. Absolutely.
Lisa, you're the love queen. She's a yogi. She's so much more evolved than I am. I just yammer around. Lisa, come on, sister. She's got love in the bag.
This is actually a hard question for me to answer, because I feel very blessed to have women in my life like Julia and friends and my mom who I have extremely open conversations with, and there's nothing that's off topic. Julia and I have talked about everything you can imagine, just we share so openly. And I think so I don't think there's any topic where I'm like, oh, I wish more women would talk to me about that. But I think that's also because of the bubble I'm in, and the fact that I'm blessed with very wonderful company. I will say that some of the most valuable conversations for me as a woman who immigrated here at a young age from Vietnam and grew up in a traditional household, and all my I have like 30 cousins, and I have like such a big extended family. And something I always struggled with inside was, do I want a family for myself? And what does it mean to like be a woman and feel feminine and womanly without going down, the traditional paths that I saw before me, like getting married, having kids, and things like that. And I know more women are having conversations about that, which is always so interesting to me. But I've really appreciated conversations with my mom in particular, and with older women who have gone one path or another, about what it means to really commit to a path, a path of motherhood, because I think
Yeah.
that is
The ultimate commitment.
a whole, yeah. And I can't
Yeah.
say, I can't presume anything because I'm not a mother, and I don't plan to be one.
Yeah.
But I know that there are so many young women all over the world who don't think twice about making that decision, or getting married, pretty early, and then they're on that path. And I think that if more young women talked about like what it means, what their life would look like, how they would feel on the inside, if they were in like a lifelong monogamous marriage with multiple kids, or what would their life look like if they didn't go down that path. um,
Yeah.
I think that would be good, because that's the default. And if we're going to talk about
Yes.
something, we should talk about what is the default that you're conditioned to do, and what's the alternative, so that you don't make. And I'm not saying motherhood's like wonderful and it's a blessing
Oh,
and
I totally get it.
like a majority of
Yeah.
it and stuff. But I know women, younger women in my life who made the decision like really early, before they I feel like at 28, like I know who I am. I know myself, and I'm such a different person than I was at 20 or something.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, if there were a culture where we talked about, like, there's like sex ed in classes, and everyone's so well versed about what it means to practice safe sex and abstinence and all of these things, use a condom, use birth control, and things like that. But what about the long term outlook of having children? Is
Yeah.
that something that we should talk about in sex ed classes? Is that something that we should, because I no one ever talked to me about that in school.
Yeah, 100%. And when we were talking, I love that for a lot of reasons. One, this show is very much rooted in like putting down the shoulds and living an authentic life. So if what is authentic to you does not include motherhood, good for you for knowing that, for a million reasons, but truly in celebration of you and who you are, that you get to live authentically. You get to write your own story for how you want it to go. And that doesn't include children. And you are still an absolute, you're still so true to who you are. And that's all that matters. But I also think for those children who are being brought into the world under shoulds, with parents who aren't really
Yeah, I like that.
parenting from an authentic place of love because they just did it because they thought they should, think about the impact on generations to come. I mean, like, truly, it's a disservice to them as well, in my opinion. So I really appreciate you saying that out loud. I think that truly is something that, we have quite an age gap. I'm 42 and you're 28. So it certainly isn't talked about in my generation, but I'm glad you said it. I think that's a great point. Oh, you guys, this has been absolutely fascinating. I really appreciate your time, and we will catch you when this app is ready to launch. Okay.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
You're so welcome. All right, everyone. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll catch you next time. Well, that's the end of this episode, but promise me, you won't stop here with whatever it is you're feeling or dreaming about. I hope you leave today feeling empowered to live life just as you see fit. If this podcast was helpful to you, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. I genuinely just want to help women live the life they dream about. So if this type of content tracks with you, subscribe to this podcast or visit our website, writeyourownstory.co, to download digital courses or to grab a journal and a mug to just dream in and dream with. It's your life, lady. Do you. And just remember, I'm rooting for you, and you've totally got this.